it mean to be a Naga Manu? I wanted to historicize a bit about the very being of our Naganese, the concept of Naganese and also the Naga political movement. The headhunters, which many of us, of course, used to be proud of the Nagas as headhunters. But they are the one who categorized, they are the one who put us in such a category in the boughs as such that and wrote about us. So let us reflect for a moment the very concept of creating a line and a boundary wherein certain peoples were not allowed to even cross over it. So that today we still have in the forms of inner line permit. And back then, it was in 1874 where the Angami territories were annexed around the Kohima by the British. Right 1 year after that, in 1875, it was what is called the Lotha Naga regions were again annexed. And the Aos were annexed in 1889, followed by what is called the Sumis in 1904 and the Konyaks in 1910. By then, when we enter into 1911, British has already written books about us. The Naga tribes of Manipur, it was published in 1911. Right next year, it was in 1912, wherein Naga Hills became part of what is called Assam province. And thereafter, the range of other books, like for instance, J.H. Hutton's wrote about the Angami Nagas published in 1921. J.B. Mills wrote about what is called the Lotha Nagas in 1922. And it continued in the forms of the production of nowadays, for instance, Christoph Hemmendorf, who wrote a book in 1966 which titled The Naked Nagas. But then I wanted to bring back to the very concept, for instance, what are the significance in the year 1918, wherein the Naga Club was formed. Why was the need of the Naga Club with headquarters in Kohima? Till today, we have the significance of those aspects. In order to protect the identity, the uniqueness of the Nagas, the very Naga being, the very Naga Manu, to protect our own existence, Naga Club was formed. And it was amazing to see in 1926 how these educated Naga Clubs members submitted a memorandum to the Simon Commissions. There were, in fact, in 1926, 14 Angamis, 2 Kacha Nagas, 1 Kuki, 1 Lotha, 1 Remai, and 1 Sema interpreters submitted a memorandum to the Simon Commission, stating that in the event of British India leaving India, let Naga not be part of their neighborings. And if we look at in the late 19th centuries, to get about our kind of history before we are being annexed, we have this distinct history. Each tribe has our own very being. So getting the base as such, Nagas want to be free. Nagas want to be as it is. More so, after the summations of this memorandum to the Simon Commission, in fact, if we do what is called in academics, we call this content analysis. Read line by line about the content of the memorandum submitted to Simon Commission. We can indeed trace about our very struggle, our very being, the Naganese in that very small letter. So what happened is that the way how as we move forward, for instance, it was 1935 that the government of India passed. More so, the significance of that is that certain Naga territories were marked as excluded areas and also partially excluded area. What does that entail? In the sense that why are the need for the British to mark certain territories of the Nagas as excluded areas, partially excluded areas? And by then, our Naga leaders were already active. For instance, it was in 1946, where aged Fizo formed what is called NNC. And in 1947, NNC declared Naga's independence. More so, if I take it fast forward, the kind of the timeline is as such that in 1963, Nagaland was established as the 16th state of India. Thereafter, the Shillong Accord was signed in 1975, wherein certain members of the Naga political leaders were not in agreement to Shillong Accord. So there is what is called the formation of NSCN in 1980. More so again, the NSCN was split into two, that is called the NSNIN and NSNK. So in order to negotiate, to bring about the peace in the Naga territory, our people went into a ceasefire agreement in 1997. And the latest, what we are having today is what is called the Framework Agreement signed in 2015. So you might be wondering, why this chap is trying to historicize it? What are the significance of all those days? So my questions to all of you is that, who wrote all those histories? Are we Nagas part of knowledge production in very moment of documenting our own history? Who are the ones that produce knowledge about us? From which frames of reference, or what is called the ontological, epistemological orientations about our very being, So the questions, especially to my young friends over here, can we pen down our own history? Can we pen down our lived experience, the shared narrative? More so, how do we decolonize the knowledge production systems and partake in this very domain of knowledge production? So I feel that it is the role of our generation to control our narrative and history, become knowledge producer and not a mere recipients of knowledge. For too long, we are being reduced as someone else's empirical evidence, which means that we continue to be someone else's data, and wherein the other person theorizes about us. Which means that when we read books like, say, for instance, J.P. Mills, J.H. Hutton's, Christoph Hemmendorf, we come to know, oh, this is the kind of reality which our foreparents goes through. Learning from the third persons about our very being, about the very Naga Manu. So how do we alter this very framework? Hence, I think it's time for us to create our own mirror, reflect ourselves in the forms of collective leadership, in the forms of taking the leadership in terms of knowledge production, or what is called these academic leaderships. Move away from being that someone else's data to part of these knowledge productions. Move beyond the commonsensical realms and enter in what is called the theoretical realms in order to theorize about our own culture, our own traditions, our history, lived experience, you name it, the very being of the Naganese. So how do we do that if we continue to live in this common sense? Someone else will design certain fashion. We become part of that very game, wherein we just reproduce that very aspect. But the moment we enter into this theoretical realm and start creating a new categories, that's where we are part of these knowledge productions. And the need among our society to cultivate the habits of reading. I was quite shocked when I was in Harvard University. There is a place called Harvard Square with a huge bookstore. And on my way to office, I saw hundreds of people queuing up. And I asked them what's going on. They were standing in the queue to buy a new copy of the book. And I asked around, what is the significance? Why can't you just wait? They were saying, the kind of new book that has been published about the American society is that it is through them, through their writings, we come to know where we have reached. They theorized about their own society and they read about a society, come to know what's going on. So I wonder how many of us now still go and purchase new books about Nagas. For instance, there was interesting statistics. On an average, 4 books about Nagas are published every year. 4 books. So how many of us are part of that game? Who are the one writing about us? More so again, when we talk about in the domain of research and knowledge productions, if we continue to be someone else's empirical evidence or data, we continue to subsume within certain categories. So knowledge for power or knowledge for empowerment or knowledge to get a job, knowledge to get promotions. So how do we alter this very framework and try and develop the kind of what is called the Naga ways of knowing? That is epistemology. The Naga being, what is called the Naga Manu, this ontology. And Naga ways of doing. Our foreparents had a very rich culture tradition, our own methodology or framework. So it's time for us to revisit that and produce knowledge that are authentic. But the moment we continue to use the kind of a framework and methodology as being theorized by other scholars, especially by the Western scholars, then we will still continue to fall trapped within that framework. So basically, if we look in terms of the tribal studies, or for that matter, Nagas, there are 3 broad perspectives. What is called perspective from above, which stems from the Western tradition, wherein that they are the theories, whereas we are data. And that has been continued to dominate. So the other which we could see is from this perspective from below, stemming from the subaltern studies, or what we call the experience of the Dalits. So if we are to questions about our Naga society, do we belong to above or below? So here, it's important to bring the kind of our Naga perspective which could be located within the framework of perspective from within in order to produce that very knowledge. In the sense that the Naga ways of knowing, Naga's ways of doing, rather than situating from the perspective from above or below, if we could locate from within. So I want to pose a question as such that, especially to my young friends, what we call today Gen Zs, in what language do you think? For instance, if you're in a university space or in a place like this, in what language do you think? And while thinking in that very particular domain of language, how do one produce knowledge? Because I was listening to our president, what is our excuse? So what is our excuse in that matter? And how do we become part of these knowledge systems? So with these few words, I want to thank this Naga Student Union Pune I want to thank our chief guests who came and encouraged us, and all the executive members, and to all those who come today. Good night. Thank you.